The security cameras caught it all. Elise Harrington, once worth billions, sobbing alone in the empty corporate hallway at 2 a.m., her designer heels discarded beside her. What happened next would change both their lives forever. Stay until the end to see how a simple act of kindness transformed two broken souls. If this story touches your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring real-life stories that remind us of the power of human connection. Marcus Jenkins wiped the sweat from his brow as he pushed his cleaning cart down the gleaming hallway of Harrington Tower. The night shift was almost over, and his feet ached from the 12 hours of mopping floors and emptying trash bins. At 45, his body didn't bounce back the way it used to, but he never complained. This job kept a roof over his daughter Zoe's head and food on their table. As a single father for the past 8 years, he'd learned to find dignity in whatever work kept his little girl safe. Tonight was different, though. As he rounded the corner toward the executive suites, he heard something unusual, soft sobbing coming from the darkened conference room. Marcus hesitated. He wasn't supposed to interact with the executives, especially not after hours. The cleaning staff were meant to be invisible, moving through the building like ghosts once the important people had gone home. But something about the raw pain in those sobs made him stop. Through the glass door, he could see a woman slumped in one of the leather chairs, her face buried in her hands. Her expensive blazer was crumpled, and her normally perfect hair fell in disarray around her shoulders. Even in this state, Marcus recognized her immediately, Elise Harrington, CEO and majority shareholder of Harrington Industries. Her face was plastered on business magazines and billboards across the city. Marcus knew he should walk away. People like Elise Harrington didn't want comfort from people like him. But he remembered how it felt to break down alone after his wife died, how he'd wished for just one kind word from anyone. Before he could reconsider, he knocked gently on the glass door. "Excuse me, ma'am? Are you all right?" Elise's head snapped up, her eyes wide with embarrassment at being discovered in such a vulnerable state. She quickly wiped at her tears, attempting to regain her composure. "I'm fine," she said sharply. "Please, just do your job and go." Marcus nodded and began to turn away, but something made him pause. "Sometimes talking helps," he said quietly. "Even to a stranger." Elise stared at him for a long moment, her carefully constructed walls crumbling under the weight of genuine concern in his eyes. "It's all gone," she whispered. "Everything my father built. Everything I was supposed to protect." That night, in the empty conference room where million-dollar deals were usually made, Elise Harrington told Marcus Jenkins how her trusted CFO had embezzled billions, how the company was facing bankruptcy, how the board had voted to remove her just hours earlier, and how her fiancé had called off their engagement when he learned she might lose her fortune. "I don't know who I am without all this," she admitted, gesturing to the building around them. "I've never been anything but Elise Harrington, heiress and CEO." Marcus listened without judgment, offering her the same quiet strength he gave his daughter when she faced her own smaller but equally important crises. When Elise finally fell silent, he simply said, "You're still you. The rest is just circumstances." As dawn broke over the city skyline, Marcus offered Elise a ride home. She hesitated before admitting another humiliating truth: her luxury apartment had already been seized, and she had nowhere to go. Her so-called friends had stopped answering her calls the moment news of the company's troubles leaked to the press. "I have a spare room," Marcus said, surprising himself with the offer. "It's nothing fancy, but it's clean and safe. Just until you figure things out." Elise looked at this man, this janitor who had shown her more kindness in one night than her elite social circle had in years, and nodded. Marcus's apartment was in a modest building on the outskirts of the city. The elevator was perpetually out of order, and the hallways smelled faintly of cooking spices from the diverse families who lived there. Elise followed him up 4 flights of stairs, her legs trembling with exhaustion and shock. "Dad? Is that you?" A teenage girl's voice called out as Marcus unlocked the door. Zoe Jenkins appeared in the hallway, already dressed for school in jeans and a faded t-shirt. She stopped short at the sight of the disheveled woman behind her father. "Zoe, this is Ms. Harrington. She's going to stay with us for a little while," Marcus explained, his tone leaving no room for questions. Zoe, wise beyond her 14 years, simply nodded and disappeared into the kitchen, returning moments later with a cup of tea for their unexpected guest. The spare room was small but meticulously clean, with a twin bed covered in a handmade quilt and a small dresser. It was Zoe's room when she was little, Marcus explained. Now she uses it for sleepovers with friends. Elise sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the simple kindness of these strangers. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Marcus shrugged. 8 years ago, when my wife died, I was lost. A neighbor I barely knew watched Zoe for weeks while I pulled myself together. Sometimes people just need someone to stand by them until they can stand on their own again. The next few weeks were a crash course in humility for Elise. The woman who once commanded a boardroom of executives now learned how to do laundry at the building's communal laundromat. She discovered the complex mathematics of grocery shopping on a budget and the satisfaction of cooking a meal from scratch. Most importantly, she witnessed the rich life Marcus had built with so little: game nights with Zoe, community potlucks in the building's courtyard, and the genuine respect he earned from everyone he encountered. Meanwhile, Marcus watched as Elise slowly transformed. The sharp edges of her personality softened. She stopped looking at her phone constantly, eventually admitting that she'd sold it to contribute to household expenses. She began helping Zoe with her homework, revealing a patient teacher beneath the hard-driving executive. One evening, as they washed dishes together after dinner, Elise confessed, "I never knew a life this simple could feel so full." Marcus smiled. "It's not about what you have. It's about who you share it with." The legal battles over Harrington Industries dragged on. Elise spent her days in meetings with lawyers who treated her with noticeably less deference now that her fortune was gone. But each night, she returned to the small apartment where Zoe would eagerly ask about her day, and Marcus would have a cup of tea waiting. 3 months after that first night, Elise received news that changed everything. The FBI had caught her former CFO trying to flee the country. With his confession, the courts ruled that while the company had suffered significant losses, enough assets remained to rebuild. The board, recognizing that Elise had been a victim rather than an accomplice, offered her a position, not as CEO, but as a senior advisor to help rebuild what was lost. That night, Elise sat at the small kitchen table with Marcus and Zoe, turning the offer letter over in her hands. "I should be ecstatic," she said. "It's a chance to reclaim some of my old life." "But?" Marcus prompted gently. "But I'm not sure I want that life back. Not all of it, anyway." She looked around the modest apartment that had become home. "I've learned more about myself in these 3 months than in 38 years of privilege." The next day, Elise accepted the position but with conditions. She would work part-time, focusing on rebuilding the company's charitable foundation rather than its profit margins. She rented an affordable apartment in the same neighborhood as Marcus and Zoe. And she started a scholarship program for single parents trying to advance their education while working full-time. 6 months later, Marcus received a promotion to facilities manager at Harrington Tower, a position he earned through his own merit, though Elise's glowing recommendation hadn't hurt. Zoe started volunteering at the Harrington Foundation's after-school program for underprivileged youth. And Elise? She found herself sitting on a park bench with Marcus one Sunday afternoon, watching Zoe play basketball with neighborhood friends. "You know," she said, "a year ago, if someone had told me I'd lose everything and end up happier, I would have had them committed." Marcus laughed. "Life has a way of giving us what we need, not what we think we want." Elise's hand found his on the bench between them. "Thank you for standing by me when no one else would." "Always," he promised, and they both knew it was true. As the sun set over the city skyline, casting golden light over the park, Elise realized that in losing her fortune, she had found something far more valuable, a family built not on obligation or expectation, but on choice and love. The billionaire heiress who once had everything but felt empty now had so much less but felt complete. Sometimes, the greatest wealth isn't counted in dollars but in the people who stand by you when the world turns away. And sometimes, the most unlikely heroes are the ones who quietly clean up messes every day, both literal and metaphorical, asking nothing in return but the chance to make someone else's burden a little lighter. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Remember that kindness costs nothing but can be worth everything to someone who's lost their way. Share in the comments a time when someone stood by you during your darkest hour, because every act of compassion deserves to be celebrated.